Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 242. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, United States Air Force Academy graduate, attorney, government leader, and international airline captain. Affectionately known as Captain T, we want to welcome William Thompson.
Well, good morning, Dr. Richards, and thank you so much for having me on this show. It's an honor.
Thank you for serving and protecting. So we so appreciate you. So Captain T, I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Well, I have a new book that has just come out. It's called The Flight to Excellence, Soaring to New Heights in Business and Life. And I wrote that book for two reasons. The first reason was that because of my eclectic background, and you have mentioned some of the highlights, pilot, lawyer, award-winning entrepreneur, and I've run several state agencies as well as a major association with over 50,000 members. I've been asked, how have you been able to do the variety of things that you've been able to do? That was the first reason for writing the book, to answer that question. But the second reason was to focus on the reader and to let them know that they can do things in their life that may seem to be unattainable as well. It's all in having a process, and I share my process called the P4 system.
You have to expound. Talk about the P4 system.
I'd love to. So the 4 Ps are principles. You got to have the right principles fundamentally. And the most important principle is integrity. The second P is people. You want to surround yourself with good people. And if you are in a leadership position, you have to be good to the people you lead. The third P is plan. I call it a flight plan because I've never taken off in an airplane without knowing exactly what my destination was. And in life, you need to know what your destination is as well. And finally, you have to perform. You have to have a bias for action because without performance, you don't get anywhere. So those are the P4 system, or the 4 Ps in the P4 system.
So what is your focus today? Is it on actually promoting the book? Is it doing coaching around the book? Is it doing speaking around the book? Is it doing corporate leadership training around the book? Share with us, Captain T.
Well, I'm promoting the book, but the book is also an additional way that allows me to do some of the other things that I do, which for the most part, speaking, but on occasion and at my choice, I do some high-level consulting with CEOs or C-suite personnel.
What can we do right now to promote you and your book?
Well, we're doing it. We're here with this podcast, particularly your podcast, because it is so well known. And the book's on Amazon, the book's on Barnes & Noble, and we're going to try to make it a bestseller as well. So to the extent that we can get the word out about it, and the reviews so far have been tremendously positive. In fact, I just got a great review from the CEO of USAA recently, as well as retired 4-star generals. The first woman general in the United States Air Force has given me a great endorsement. With that and podcasts like yours, we're going to make this a bestseller.
Absolutely. So that's what we want to do, is definitely go to Amazon and or Barnes & Noble and pick up this amazing book. So talk about individuals in your lineage, your top 2 influencers, and what lessons did they teach you?
Well, my top 2 influences, I'll use my parents as one, and I'll use Dr. Martin Luther King as another. And it's very timely since we are entering the weekend of celebration for Dr. King's birth. And I had the tremendous opportunity to meet Dr. King in my hometown when I was just 13 years old. I was what I call a foot soldier in the civil rights movement back in the day. And Dr. King had come to our hometown to give us a shot in the arm, so to speak, in the movement, because it had been going on for a while and was kind of not flaming out, but people were becoming weary because of the lack of progress. And that shot in the arm came in the person of Dr. King. My best friend's father was very active in the NAACP and very active in the civil rights movement in my hometown of Orangeburg, South Carolina, which was a hotbed of the civil rights movement, primarily because of 2 African-American colleges there. And Dr. King came to speak. I happened to be playing with my best friend when his father called us in the house, and Dr. King was sitting in the den there. He introduced us, and we had the opportunity to sit there and talk to him for about a half hour or so. It was absolutely amazing. And I found that Dr. King's values were the same values of my parents. I think it was an old school thing back in the day. When I look at those 2 groups, if you will, my parents as a group and Dr. King, those were the major influences in my life. And because of that, it literally changed my life. I got on a track that would take me to places I never even imagined were attainable for me.
Captain T, what are you most grateful for right now in your life?
I'm grateful that I have a loving family, most importantly, that I have a handful of good friends, and literally a handful, because I can count my best friends on one hand. I'm grateful that I have the financial resources to do the things in life that I want to do. And I'm also fortunate that I don't have extravagant taste. So I can do the things that I want to do. And I'm grateful that I have a good reputation in my community. Those are the things, when you dig down to the bottom line, I think are most important in most people's lives.
We're in the midst of a pandemic, COVID-19, and you've seen incidents and situations that have caused us to shift and pivot. Talk to our audience about a pivot, a shift, a story that's going to uplift them in times of crises, and they want to build a sustainable business.
Well, the fact is, in life, and you and I mentioned this before we actually got on the call, life happens. There are always challenges in life, no matter what it is you're doing, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how powerful you are, you're going to have to deal with challenges in life. And if you accept that and take that as the reality that it is, then you can form your mindset to deal with those challenges without having them knock you off course, so to speak. COVID is one example of that, but we're getting through it. We do have a vaccine, and there are processes, procedures that we can use now to protect ourselves. Wear the mask, social distancing, wash your hands, and people who deal with those procedures in the way that they are presented will be able to get themselves to the vaccine. You get the vaccine, you get through COVID. But that's just one example of any number of things that you have to deal with in life. I was in the first group of African Americans to integrate an all-white high school in the Deep South, in my hometown of Orangeburg, South Carolina. Went to school for a while with federal marshal and state trooper escorts every day. That was life, the life that I chose at the time because we volunteered to go to that school. But getting through that situation, again, put me on a track to go out and do things that, had I not gone to that school, would have never been available to me. I ended up going to the United States Air Force Academy, the first African American from South Carolina to go to that school. Had I not gone to Orangeburg High School and dealt with life, dealing with integrating that school, I probably would never have been exposed to the opportunity to go to the academy. So often when you're dealing with the challenges of life, other opportunities present themselves. And that's happened with me time and time again in my own life.
Let's talk about give, get. What do you want to give and what do you want to get?
My gift is to share my experiences, which I've done in the book, to share the process that I've used to go out and accomplish the things in my life. And it's not to suggest that the reader or the audience or that you should try to do what I have done, but the message is that you can do things that you want to do that you may not have considered possible before. The big thing is to understand that just about everything we do has a process to it, that there are rules to the game, and you have to understand the rules to be able to play the game. I use football as an example because most people understand football. If you're sitting in the stadium looking at the game, you can never score a touchdown. You have to be on the field to be able to score a touchdown. If you're on the field, you got to understand what the rules are to play the game. So if you don't understand that you got to tackle somebody and throw them down to the ground, that's one of the rules in the game, then you're going to lose the game because the other team will run right by you. So you have to understand, you have to be in the game, and then you have to understand the rules of the game. And I have been fortunate in life in that I have been given the opportunity that many of us never have to kind of pull the curtain back and see some of the rules of the games that I've had the opportunity to play in. And those are the kind of things that I want to share, that I want to give, and I do so in my new book.
Captain T, that was a value bomb there. So talk about the rules of the game. And you had mentioned about pulling back the curtain. And that was very profound because a lot of us, even in 2021, which we could say is a travesty, that we are still trying to figure out the rules of the game of business, how to get access to capital, how to build sustainable businesses, how to build generational wealth. What advice would you give regarding that?
I have found that relationships are key to that process. And let me expound on that. I gave a speech to a group of African-American folks who were in Harvard Business School. And of course, they're all qualified. They're at Harvard. They're at the business school, very intelligent people. But what many did not understand is that when they get out and start working in those corporations, trying to climb that ladder, it is not just about qualifications. Now, maybe it should be, but it's not. It's about relationships. And often we don't understand that. And so, for example, I'll use my Air Force experience. I was the only African-American pilot in my squadron, but I made it a point to go to my commander's dinner when he would invite the pilots over to his house, even though from a social standpoint of view, it wasn't that attractive to me, right? But it was because it was my commander. He'd invited all the pilots, included me, and I needed to show up and have a presence there, to mingle in the room, to spend some time talking to him and his wife. And then I could go on after that to my regular party with all the folks that didn't start until 11 o'clock at night anyway, because the commander's party started at 8, you see. But often we think, okay, that's not something that attracts me, that I want to do, because it's not the kind of music that I like to listen to or the social environment that I want to be in. But those are fundamental parts of moving around in this system, because we know who controls the system. And so you have to build relationships, and you have to be comfortable in the environment, and people have to be comfortable with you in the environment, because that's how you move up in this game, you see. I'll give you another example. I got selected to a board, state board of the American Cancer Society. Now, I got involved with the Cancer Society because there was a Black woman who was a staff person who asked me to serve on the local board for the area that she was involved in. And I did so to help her out. She said, I got nobody of color on my board. I need you on my board. And I was glad to do that. She nominated me to be on the state board. And when I got on the state board, the chairman, a very influential businessman in Boston, said, I want to get you involved early because I do that with all my new board members by serving on the committee. Now, I didn't particularly want to serve on this committee, but he had reached out to me, asked me to serve, and to build my credibility with him, number one, and to make sure I didn't embarrass my good friend at the local board who had nominated me for the state board, I agreed to do that. And having agreed to do that, I made sure that I did it the best way possible, serving on the committee. Well, the relationship with the chairman of the state board at that time ended up over time, him taking me under his wing. I would go on to chair the state board. He would go to the national board. I ended up on the national board as well because of that relationship. Not to mention that he and I ended up doing business together. At the time, the largest deal I'd ever done, a $50 million deal that he included me in because of the relationship and because that comfort level. And he built a comfort level with me because I interacted with him. We went to lunch together, those sorts of things. And so to get back to those Harvard HB business school students that I was talking about, I said, you have to interact with your colleagues and particularly the people above you. You get invited to play golf, go out and play golf. Even if you don't play golf, ride around in the cart. It's all about them getting to know you better and to feel comfortable with you. Because when it comes time for promotions, everybody's going to have the Harvard Business School degree. The decision is going to be made on that comfort level and whether a person knows you and whether you have built and established that relationship. And so that's one of the things that we have not been as good at doing because we tend to look at things sometimes from a social standpoint of view. You say, well, I don't play golf because that's not my game. Well, you don't have to make it your game, but you have to be in a situation where you can go out and socialize and give people an opportunity to feel comfortable with you and to realize that, yeah, this is a good person, a good lady. Sure, she's got talent, but a lot of my folks have talent, but I can socialize with her. I'm comfortable with her. And so when I have to make a decision about who I'm going to advance, she's going to be in the consideration as well. And that's the thing that I think we don't understand sometimes. The politics of, if you will, of corporate or the military. I mean, it's the same thing. Who becomes the general officers? Not too many people that look like you and I, but the ones that do have developed that ability to have people feel comfortable with them, in addition to the talent. And so talent is a given. I'm talking about on top of talent, what you need. And that's what I mean by pulling back the curtain and getting that peep into how things really work and how things really happen.
And Captain T, you were a young man, and who taught you that lesson?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I learned part of that by going to Orangeburg High School and being in that situation where you start out with everybody hating you for being there, right? First day of school, you get off the bus, we had to walk down through these two lines of screaming humanity. People shouting and calling your names and spitting on you, right? Saying that you don't belong over here. Go back to your own side of town. And you are in that environment. And then over a 4-year period of time, things slowly but surely get better because people have the opportunity to know you better as a person. I had a guy in my physics class. Let me take a step back. No one would sit next to you or in front of you or behind you. So there were always empty desks around us when we were at Orangeburg High because they didn't want the black to rub off on them back in the day, right? But this guy came up to me one day. He was in my physics class and he said, I can't figure it out. And I said, what is it that you can't figure out? He said, I can't figure out how you're cheating. I said, why do you think I'm cheating? He said, because from where I sit over on the side, I can see your test scores and your quiz scores, and they're better than mine. And you got to be cheating. I said, well, I'm not cheating. I'm just good at physics. I said, now, you may have the perception that all black folks are good at football or basketball or running track or whatever, but some are good and some aren't. And some are good at physics and some aren't. And that applies not only to black folks, but it applies to everybody. And so in this particular case, I'm better than you at physics. You may be better than me than something else, but that's the way it goes. And this strange look kind of came over his face because he had never considered that. He had just been taught that all blacks were dumb, shiftless, and lazy. And to be able to, number one, engage me, and I give him credit for at least engaging me, even though he was trying to find out how I was cheating. But it gave him something to think about. And as time went on, he and I actually ended up becoming friendly. I won't say we became really good friends, but we were friendly because he started processing things from a different perspective. And being in that environment for 4 years and having those little aha moments with white folks as they made their transition from viewing you one way, but because they now had the opportunity to actually engage with you and to be with you and to see that what they had been taught maybe at home or generally in the community was not necessarily true, was, I think, a tremendous part of that initial process that you asked about.
Captain T, I am literally I can't say a word. And the reason I say that, it's over 100 years. And I cannot believe that we are still having this conversation about race relations and the myths and the stigma behind African Americans and Blacks and just everything that's going on. It's just unbelievable.
Well, the fact of the matter is that it still exists. And I have no data about what I'm about to say, but I think essentially what has happened was when I went to school, high school, and was involved in that situation back in the 60s, the country may have been, I'll pick arbitrary numbers, let's say 35% of our citizens were in the right lane and wanted to do the right thing. Maybe 65% either didn't or didn't care. It wasn't on their radar. And over time, things have improved considerably. We've made a lot of progress. And maybe the shift has gone from 35 good to 65 not caring or bad to 65 being good and 35% not caring or being bad. But 35% is still a huge segment of our population. In more recent times, when we've looked at our politicians and the number of the percentage of people who are following a particular politician or not, that 35 to 40% number was there consistently. And so while we have made progress, and I tend to be an optimistic person, there's still a long way to go. And we are not a post-racial society, which many people talked about when President Obama was elected. But we saw the reaction to him in the context of the Tea Party and other things. Yes, we've come a long way. Yes, we've made progress, but there's still a long way to go.
What is the best decision you've made as a leader?
The best decision I made that prepared me to become a good leader was to go to the Air Force Academy, because that is a leadership institute. And those cadets that go into that school and come out of that school have that foundation to be good leaders. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be one, but you are taught certain fundamental principles of leadership that I think have stayed with me for my entire life. And key to that is how you treat the people that you lead. You want to treat them primarily with dignity and respect. You want to prepare them by training them or getting them ready to do whatever it is that you are going to require them to do, understanding that the time and the resources you put into them come back to benefit you. You want to listen to them because very often they have very valuable things to say. Now, you may not accept everything that they say because ultimately you're the leader and you're in a position of responsibility and you have to make the decision. But you want to get as much information as possible, even when they are challenging you. And it's all right for them to challenge you as long as it's done in a respectful way. And finally, you want to understand that they're human beings and you want to treat them that way. Often they have things going on in their lives that impact their ability to help you and to perform in the environment that you're in. One of the things that I would always do, and I learned this at the academy, was the first question you ask someone when they're not performing or when there's an issue that you need to deal with is, tell me what's going on in your life. How are things at home? How's the wife? How are the kids? And often you'll find that there's something outside of the work environment that's impacting the work environment. And that's a very key component of leadership.
You mentioned the word listening. What is that resounding sound or message that your generation is saying?
My generation is mostly retired these days. So my generation is saying, I want to enjoy life. I want to take the trips with my wife. I want to spend time with my family and my grandkids. And my generation as a whole is probably not as engaged as a generation below me. Now, I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning. Even though I don't need to, I'm financially set. I can get up and not do anything but just read books all day, and I love to read. But yet, in fact, my fiance and I were mentioning this just last night. She says, why do we keep pushing like we do? And I think it's because it's inherent in us to keep moving forward, to keep contributing in some positive way to our community as a whole. She does extremely well. She's run her own business for 30 years. And there's an area of Atlanta called Buckhead, which is the upscale area of Atlanta. And she runs a business in there that caters to, for the most part, wealthy people. And she does extremely well. I built a business that when I sold it had 150 employees in 5 states. I did well. And so I don't have to work either, but I'm still writing a book. I'm still out here speaking. I'm doing podcasts with you because I still want to be a positive contributor to my broader community. And particularly from the standpoint of helping people who have been disadvantaged in one way or another, to help them move forward and to share some of the benefits of what I have learned so that they can do well. Those are the things that drive me. That's what my generation is saying.
Speaking of positive contributions, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered? Talk about your legacy.
I want to be remembered as a guy that loved his family, that loved his friends, and that was there for them whenever they would need my help. We work hard for a large part of our lives to take care of ourselves. But hopefully you get to a point where you understand the importance of helping to take care of other people. I've often said that on your tombstone, it's not going to be said that he was a hard worker. It's going to be he was a family man, hopefully. That's how I want to be remembered, as having made a positive contribution, primarily to the people that I love, people that are close to me, but then to the community as a whole. I have been one that, even today, I serve on several nonprofit boards, and I take the time and the effort to make sure that I'm giving back in some positive way.
If you could change one thing, what would it be?
Oh, that's easy. That everybody would be viewed for their worth as opposed to skin color or other characteristics that have nothing to do with their ability to bring something of a positive nature to the broader community of life. And if we can ever deal with that problem and get beyond it, how much better would our world be?
Captain T, there are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. What brand or business that's dominating that you admire and why?
That's an easy question. Amazon. And I'll tell you why. Let me take a step back and be clear that we are specifically talking about brand, not necessarily the person behind the brand. I have respect for Jeff Bezos because he started this business in his garage, and Amazon literally dominates today across the board. I don't even go to Home Depot anymore to buy something because I know I can order it on Amazon and it'll be here tomorrow. Save me a drive and can probably get it cheaper. And so to look at Amazon.com in terms of the utility that they have brought to the world, it is absolutely phenomenal. My daughter, I got a 26-year-old daughter, she lives in an apartment. So she has her Amazon stuff delivered at my home, and she doesn't live very far away. So she can just pop by after work and pick things up rather than have them outside of her apartment door where they may, get picked up by somebody who they weren't there for. And I would say on average, she gets about 3 to 4 packages here a day. Everything from vitamins to her cosmetics to just whatever. She says, I don't even go to the store because I got Amazon Prime. Why? It's cheaper and I don't have to go to the store. Just pop here. I respect that. Now, he's obviously made a lot of money because of that. But from a brand standpoint of view, in terms of being able to satisfy a need in our society, I can't think of anything more dominating than Amazon these days across the board. And you can get anything and you can have it sometimes the same day, quicker than driving down to the store. And so now I think Jeff Bezos should give away a lot more of his money, quite frankly. And his ex-wife is doing that. In fact, she just gave away $4 billion, and a significant part of that money was targeted to HBCUs. I happen to serve on the board of a HBCU. I'm the treasurer, and she just gave us $20 million. In her goal, she said, she's worth about $65 billion. She said, I want to give it all away before I die. And I mean, I just have tremendous respect for that whole mentality. And so Jeff's up there with 187 billion. He needs to give a lot more money away. So I respect the brand. I think he can do a better job as a person.
Any advice you wish you had followed?
Nothing specific in that area because, quite frankly, I generally follow good advice. In fact, I got an email yesterday from a lady who is an award-winning speaker, member of the Speaker Hall of Fame. And she said, Captain T, I see your book is out. You need to contact this person because this person will help you get traction with your book in the marketplace. And I sent the guy an email last night. I said, Eddie, I'm contacting you because this mutual friend of ours said that I need to reach out and talk to you about getting some traction with my book. I don't know if you and I will do any business together, but because she recommended that I talk to you, I'm following up. She always gives me good advice and I listen to her. So shoot me an email or give me a call when you get a chance. Now, will anything happen? I don't know. I don't particularly care. But the fact that she suggested that I do this and I have respect for her, I'm going to follow up. And I have developed a habit of doing that. And often it doesn't necessarily turn into anything, but I listen to people and I'm not going to let opportunities go by just because I thought I knew more or I was lazy or whatever. It didn't take much to follow up. And I did. I've listened to my parents, although it took me a while to figure out that they knew more than I did growing up. But you get to a point where you say, wow, if I just listened to what Daddy said, I wouldn't be in this trouble right now, right? And so consequently, as I've told my kids, I make mistakes, we all do, but I very seldom make the same mistake twice because I learned from my mistakes and I'm really focused on not making the same mistake twice.
Captain T, I want you to have a short monologue with a person. I want you to name that person and they have inspired you. What would you say to them?
I would say, thank you. Thank you for the inspiration. And when you said that, again, Dr. King comes to mind. Be able to sit in a room with him and have what was less than a half-hour conversation, but to be there, not one-on-one, because it was my best friend and I and his father, but the four of us to sit there and to just listen to him expound on what we were dealing with at the time, which was people getting weary of the fight. I'll take a step back. It was 1964. The Civil Rights Act had not been passed yet, but the movement in Orangeburg had been going on for 4 years. The first major demonstration and sit-in because of the segregated lunch counters at the Five and Dime store had occurred in 1960. I had gotten arrested the first time when I was age 12. I went to jail the second time at age 14. So you got young folks in this fight. I think we were a lot more mature in those days as well. And people were getting tired because there's no progress. And Dr. King gave a speech that night at the local church across the street from the two colleges. But to have him just talk to us about how our cause was righteous and how even though times were turbulent and even though we were dealing with a lot, that ultimately we were going to prevail. And to have that mindset to know that if he kept pushing, and if we kept pushing, that it was going to get a lot better. And of course, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. I mean, this guy, for his age, the amount of wisdom and foresight that he had, and his ability to communicate that, because we all know how he was just a great orator. But to be able to just sit there and talk to him one-on-one, and for him to be able to connect with somebody who is 12 and 13 years old and have that conversation at a level that was inspiring was just an amazing gift that he had. Very surreal. In fact, when he was giving that speech that night, and of course, we've all heard excerpts of his speeches, but I sat there as a 13-year-old kid thinking, wow, I'm listening to him and he's got the whole church inspired and just a shot in the arm that everybody, the community needed moving. And I had the opportunity to sit a few hours earlier and actually talk to him one-on-one. It was very surreal. And I came out of that speech that night with a new dedication and motivation toward, as I called it, being a foot soldier in the battle for civil rights. Because of Dr. King, I made the decision to go to Orangeburg High because it was a voluntary thing. My parents and I had talked about it, but I was leaning toward just going to the black high school because that's where all my buddies were going. You know, it was my aunt taught there at the high school. It was 1 block up, 2 blocks over from where I lived. So why do I want to get up on a bus and go all the way over on the other side of town and deal with all of this stuff, right? But it was because of that conversation with Dr. King that ultimately helped me make the decision to say, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to take the easy way out. I'm going to do something more difficult, but it's going to be much more, there's a word that I'm looking for that I draw a blank on, but much more positive in terms of the consequential. It would be much more consequential in the longer term fight. And I decided to do that. And again, as I had said before, it literally changed my life because even though I was dealing with the negative aspects of going to Orangeburg High, there were so many positive aspects that I had not even ever considered or knew that would come my way. I'll give you one example. The kids at Wilkerson High School, the black high school, you know, there were like 15 of them trying to use one microscope in a biology lab, right? Be able to look down and see the frog or whatever. Geez, at Orangeburg High, 2 kids had a microscope, you know, at a desk. And everybody had that opportunity. And when I look back on it to see the differences in terms of what the 2 schools offered, and again, as I said before, to be introduced to the Air Force Academy, which I had never heard of, didn't even know that it existed. I vaguely had heard of Army and Navy, you know, West Point, Naval Academy, but I didn't really know what they were either. And just to be exposed to a much broader swath of life, understanding the game, having that opportunity to pull the curtain back and to see how the game is played and to see what the opportunities are. And so that was a big thing that I took away from my experience at Orangeburg High, even though there were many aspects of it that were negative, yet at the same time, it just opened up a whole new channel of life that I never would have had the opportunity had I gone to Wilkerson High School. Not right. It was just the way it was. The differences between resources to one school versus resources to the other.
Captain T, you talked about Martin Luther King in leadership. Who are the Martins of today? Who are the leaders of today?
Well, from a celebrity standpoint of view, I guess President Obama would come the closest to that. Obviously, President of the United States, I think he did a phenomenal job. I didn't necessarily agree with all of his policies, but there's no question that he carries certain moral authority with him. You look at his family life, relationship between he and Michelle and his kids. You look at his tenure as the most powerful person in the world, because that comes with that seat, and how he hoped to push the United States forward with respect to the great issues of our day, climate change, peace, even though he inherited wars. And so I think with respect to that broader category, he would be the person that immediately comes to mind. But it's much more diffused these days than it was sort of back in the day. There's so many people that can have a voice in a very narrow lane. People that you and I may not even know about, but they may have 1 million followers. And so because of technology, because of how we operate today, there are influences all over the place, many of which we don't even know about because it is so diffused. And periodically I'll run across a person like that, and it's amazing. Here in Atlanta, there's what I call the old school Atlantans downtown. And Dr. King would have come out of that environment, right? Founder of the insurance company, the Dobbs and the Westleys and those kind of royal names in the Black community that came out of the Atlanta experience back in the day. But then there are kids out in the suburbs that are multi-millionaires in technology and doing things that nobody downtown even knows who they are. But one reason or another, social, boom, you run into them. And it's like, wow, you're running $100 million business and the people downtown don't even know you're out here. don't even know who you are. And you can buy and sell half of them. It is interesting, particularly in this environment, how diffused leadership is because of technology and the fact that younger folks, kids, are just going in their own directions with their own following and doing some amazing things. Interesting time in our lives.
Captain T, we're going to reverse roles here for a moment. If you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? And I've always had the ability, even at age 14, when I chose to go to Orangeburg High, to look to the future and to ask myself that question. At the time, questions that I asked were, if I go to Orangeburg High, I'm going to be going with the people who will be running the bank one day, who will probably be the mayor one day, city council, other significant businesses in my hometown. And even though they may not like me now, they will respect me 20, 25, 30 years from now. Now, I left home, and so none of that occurred, right? Because when I went to the Air Force Academy and my career took me in a totally different direction. But yet, that's what I was thinking about when I was 14, when I made the decision to go to that school. I've always been looking ahead. Where do I want to be in 5 years? And I ask my same question today. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? I want to be healthy. I want to be enjoying my family and good friends. I want to be traveling the world again to get back to a lot of the places that I flew into as an international pilot, but didn't have the time to really take in that community. Maybe I'll go over and spend 3 or 4 weeks in that location these days. And finally, how do I give back more than I'm doing today? And so those are the types of questions that I ask myself in terms of 5 or 10 years from now.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Here we go.
Your first job?
Cutting grass in the neighborhood.
The last movie you saw?
The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I'd seen it before in the theaters 10 years ago. I looked at it again the other night and didn't remember anything, so it was a good movie again.
Your favorite color?
Blue.
You relax doing what?
Reading.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Aretha Franklin.
Your favorite dance song?
Electric Slide.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Vegetables. Salad.
Your favorite month?
June.
Work out or hit the couch?
Workout.
Captain T, thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and do business with you? And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Best one is through my website, CaptainTSpeaks.com.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com, and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.